My name is Jerome Bande, Regional Director for the East County Regional Office. Welcome to the County Executive's FY26 conversation with the African, Caribbean, and the diaspora communities. Welcome to the White Oak Community Recreation Center. We would like to thank Director Robin Riley, the Center Director, Tunisia, for really accommodating us throughout the year in many of our community events held in this particular location. So thank you, Robin and Tunisia. We would also like to thank the County Council offices attending this meeting, as well as the chairs of some of our advisory groups. I've seen Ms. Harvey representing the Caribbean American Advisory Group, and also members of the African Advisory Group, and also members from the Haitian community. Welcome. We also do have other county representatives from the PIO, OMB here, and Department of Health and Human Services. We also do have our newest liaison for the African American community, Mr. Hawkins. These meetings are designed to allow the county executive to talk directly with our communities on issues that are important to you that may be part of his consideration as he develops the budget for the next fiscal year. You have this opportunity. You also do have the opportunities to join other sessions that have been held. There's 11 of them. We've already done probably half of those, but those we schedule moving forward. You should have the schedule at the registration desk at the front. We would really want you to really focus on what our communities need. Talk to the county executive. You'd also have another opportunities once the county executive transfers his budget recommendations to the county council to get involved as well. So this is really one of a number of occasions where you could really have input. So we appreciate that. At this time, we will want to hear from Mr. Sean Ellis, who is the Acting Director of the Office of Community Partnerships.
Good evening. Thank all of you for coming this evening. As you heard, my name is Sean Ellis. I am the Acting Director of the Office of Community Partnerships. For those of you who aren't familiar with OCP or the Office of Community Partnerships, our mission is to strengthen the relationship between county government, specifically the county executive, and the residents we serve, with a specific attention to our emerging and immigrant communities and those underserved communities. For us, we do this a few different ways, primarily through linguistically and culturally appropriate community outreach and engagement, and the second way is through language access. Our team is responsible for assisting county agencies and departments in developing a language access plan to ensure that all county agencies can serve residents in the languages that they speak, and that vital documents are available in the top 6 languages spoken in Montgomery County. So with that, I was going to make my comments brief today. For those of you who may be in need of interpretation in French, we have interpreters here available to support you. If you speak Haitian Creole and would like to hear today's conversation in Haitian Creole, we have interpreters here to support you as well. You can come over to the desk on the side and we'll get you a device so that you can listen to today's presentation in language, okay? Thank you again, and I'm really encouraged by the folks that I see in the audience tonight, because these opportunities to engage the county executive are really important, and we continue to encourage our communities to get involved as early and as often as possible.
I see also members of the East County Citizens Advisory Board, Mark and Peter, welcome. We would also like to say thanks to all the departments taking time to join us to provide information and resources from their respective departments. And at this time, I would like to call on our County Executive, Mark Eldridge, to come talk to us about his budget priorities, the process, and the current fiscal climate of the county budget. Our County Executive, Mark Eldridge.
So wow, nice job on the volume. Thank you. So I'm happy to be here. This is part of the circuit of community engagement meetings we have on the budget. We've done a few already. Some of the ones coming up that are, I think especially interesting. We've been trying to reach more of the different cultural groups in Montgomery County than we have before. So tonight's meeting is with the African diaspora. We have another meeting coming up with the African American community. We've got a meeting with Chinese speakers. We've got a meeting with Latino community. We have a meeting with seniors. We have a meeting with the PTAs and the school community, as well as geographical meetings. So we're trying to get out as widely in the county as we can and explain as much about the budget as we can. I am not going to tell you what we're planning, because one of the things we've done is move the budget hearings with the public to the front of the budget process rather than the end of the budget process. When I got elected, it was done after the budget was done, which isn't really useful. So we're doing these now, and then I have many staff members here. They'll be taking notes, and we're going to look at what it is we can fit in the budget that's coming up based on our discussions around with the community right now. So don't look for me to tell you what we're going to do yet, because we're not sure what we're going to do yet. The other thing is we also don't know what our revenue is going to be, and we probably won't get a better picture of our revenues until toward the end of November, if the state's able to produce all the reports completely at that point. Sometimes the last couple of years it's been pushed back to January. But we will know as much as we can. We'll start building our budget process, and that'll be finalized. We have to present it to the council on March 15th. So I want to go through just a slide presentation, let you know where we are and what kind of challenges we're facing this year. So, first slide, second slide, third slide. Okay, that was quick. See, this will not be so quick. So just to explain, the county has two budgets. One is an operating budget and one is a capital budget. The operating budget is everything it takes to actually provide the services. So every social worker, every nurse, every county employee in the housing department or any department, all of them show up in the operating budget. All the people who work on road maintenance and all that stuff. The capital budget is the budget for facilities in Montgomery County. Sometimes it's a bridge, sometimes it's repairs for a roadway, it's parking lots and garages, it's maintaining parks, it's police and fire stations, sidewalk improvements, swimming pools and aquatic centers, water and sewer facilities, which are getting increasingly expensive because the amount of rain we have is above the level that our systems were built for. It's also bus transit centers, government facilities, this building, library building, metro stations, all the things we build. So if you think about capital, it goes into objects that we build, and the operating is people who we use to operate all our services. So this gives you an idea of where our revenues come from in the county. And the first big one, the biggest of all of them, is the property tax, and we get about $2.285 million out of that. Next is income tax, and it's $2,051,000. Then it's actually 51. I'm thinking it was 51 million or 51,000. And then intergovernmental transfers, that's money we get from the state. So the school gives us a fair amount of money for the state. We get money for construction projects. We get some federal money. So all that money goes into intergovernmental transfers. Charges for services are about $481 million. Other taxes are $327 million. That could be entertainment tax, hotel tax, small things. Fines and miscellaneous is $246 million. So at least if you get fined for speeding, you should know that it's going to a good cause. And then there's transfer and recordation taxes. And this is something that's fairly volatile in our budget. It's based on when people sell houses or sell buildings because of the high interest rates and the kind of like major slowdown in the housing market over the last few years. which we hope changed this week with the announcement by the Fed last week that they're lowering interest rates. It cost us last year about $75 million in revenue between what we normally would have gotten and what we wound up getting. So that's a fairly big number in terms of what moves the needle in the budget. And you'll see why better on the next slide, which shows you where the money goes. Because I want you to understand how much flexibility we have for the things you're likely to be asking for tonight. So on this side, you can see the school budget out of the $7.13 billion. Between this and this, it's over half that amount of money. This is 3.3, this is 333 million. Together, it's 356 million dollars going into $3,356 million going into the schools between Montgomery College, which is more than half of that amount. Then public safety, which is police and fire and the jail we operate, is $755 million. All of the other services, your health and human services, $511 million. General government is $396 million. Transportation is $286. That's your bus drivers and the people who do the maintenance work and everything. The environment gets $200 million. Grants, insurance, and the earned income tax credit get $195 million. The earned income tax credit is a supplement that we pay on top of a state program that gets money into the hands of low-income people in the county. Libraries and culture and recreation, now you're down to $128 million for all of the libraries and all the rec facilities we operate. Housing drops to what's $129 million. That's all the housing programs the county operates in the county, which is some rent subsidy. It's monitoring inspections that we do. It's working with the rent stabilization program. All those things are in housing. OPEB is money that goes to employee retirement in the future, which is subject to some discussion. And then operating expenses are $80 million. That's like electricity, fuel we buy for vehicles, gas, natural gas that we use. Parking planning, which is not a county agency, it's a state agency, is $205 million. Debt service is $480 million. And if you're wondering why debt service is that big, it's we don't pay for school buildings in cash. Because if we paid it in cash, we'd only do two things a year. Our total bonding in the county is $280 million. That's how much we can finance long-term. And the high school costs about $160 million. The middle school is over $100 million. Elementary schools are in the middle, tens of millions of dollars. So if we were paying for things in cash, we wouldn't be able to do anything. It started when Ike was county executive. Construction costs were low until COVID hit, and interest rates were really low. It was cheaper to borrow than delay building, because if you don't build this year and you wait to next year, inflation makes that project more expensive. So the longer you wait to do things, the more expensive the project begins. So when borrowing rates were low, we borrowed heavily so we could get things built at a lower price, and the cost of the bonds would have been lower than what interest would have cost us. So I thought he made a good decision, and the council thought he made a good decision. But that number is high because that's all the things we're paying for on bonds. It's fire stations, police stations, all the schools we do, new libraries, new rec centers, all those things are primarily bond funded. And I'll talk about what the problem is with that a little bit later. Next slide. So these are the fixed commitments that we have in our on our general fund revenue. So this is our commitment to schools and the college. That's just general fund money. It's not money we get from the state. This is the rest of the public budget, which is public safety, $752 million. If you remember, the other number was not that much bigger than that. We don't get a lot for public safety compared to how much extra we get for the school system. Then after this, the rest of the budget is $466 million. So the whole budget is smaller than what we spend on police and fire. Then there's debt service again. The retirement and the pension and the reserves fall in here. And then pay-go, which is capital we put into the capital budget so we don't bond more. If we put less money in, we'd have to increase the amount of bonds we have. We had cash this year, so we put some cash into it. Next. So these are the challenges that we're facing pretty much every year, some a little bit worse this year or last year. Blueprint funding. The blueprint, if you remember, is the state's requirement for improving education investment. And that puts a lot of pressure on our budget. A couple of years ago, when we raised taxes, it was because the state has said that we have to get teacher pay to $60,000 by 2026. To do that, we were like at $53,000 a year for starting pay. How bad that is if you made $53,000 a year, you didn't qualify for a moderately priced dwelling unit because you made too little money. And they're not the only employees in the county who couldn't get a moderately priced dwelling unit. The blueprint is going to require investments in staff that we haven't made so far. So there are a lot of things that are going to be required. This is a big discussion in the state because many counties are finding it very hard to fund all this. And the state, which was supposed to have money to help us, has no money to help us. So this is pretty much fallen on the counties. We have constrained resources because we have limited places to raise money from. We don't have the flexibility that counties in Virginia have, for example, where they have more sources of revenue than Montgomery County has. One tax in Virginia alone, they tax licenses, and in Fairfax County, the licensing tax brings in $200 million a year to the Fairfax County government. Montgomery County gets exactly $0 from the business community. Other than the property taxes, they don't pay the piggyback tax on their incomes, and they're contributing $0 to the county outside of the property taxes pretty much. So again, a big difference between us and Virginia. Infrastructure demands have gotten bigger. The schools continue to need refreshments. There's hopefully less need for capacity right now, but putting money into the schools consumes a large part of our budget. We have limited ourselves to $280 million in bonds for over 6 years ago. So any of you know anything about inflation, what you spent on $280 million on 6 years ago, you cannot buy the same things this year. You can buy less. So we're actually funding in a pattern. We're able to buy less and less each year as our needs go up each year. We haven't even been able to invest in rapid transit in the county. Inflation and financial market conditions. Inflation's finally coming down, and the interest rates are dropping. When the interest rates drop, Montgomery County's borrowing rates drop, which is a good thing. And when inflation tampers down, then the cost of the things we buy starts going down again. So we're fortunately on the right side of that cycle. However, the right side of the cycle has only been over the last few months. But over the next year, as things continue this way, and the Fed has said looks like they're going to further reduce interest rates, that should help us. One thing that would be a big help, we've refinanced bonds before from high interest rates to lower interest rates. So if we had to do any borrowing over the last couple of years at higher rates, we should be able to refinance them as rates drop. Maintenance of effort is a required thing for Montgomery County. Per student costs in the schools, I've got a slide on that, but this is not a pretty picture. The county is investing less in students than it did 12 years ago. And that's another problem, about 10% less. Real estate tax volatility. The good side of real estate tax has been your basic property values have all gone up. So congratulations on the rising property values. The taxes allow us to raise more revenue every year, which is a good thing. But recordation and transfer. Recordation is when you sell a property, you got to record a deed, and you pay a tax on the transfer, and you pay a tax on the recordation. So that's the money we lost over the last few years, which you think will start coming back now as more people buy and sell property. But it's volatile. It's unlike some things, it is not steady. I've got a graph I'll show you where you can see how it spiked up and then dropped down severely. And lastly is recruitment and retention challenges. The world of work has changed and wages have changed in the private sector. Even the private sector has had to increase wages for the county to be competitive. If I want to hire, whether it's a lawyer or someone who's an accountant or someone who is a staff who just does clerical work in the department, all those positions in the private sector have gone up. If we're going to hold people here, we've got to be competitive. We cannot pay wages from 5 years ago to people who are in the job market now. So we're feeling what every employer in the region is feeling, and retention is a challenge because a lot of people, particularly after COVID, opted to not work anymore. And one of the challenges is with the lack of child care in the county or the cost of child care in the county. We've had a lot of workers, not just for the county government, but in the county in general. A lot of women have not gone back to work. I only say women because I think, as we obviously know, most women get stuck with the child care responsibility. It's usually the woman who gives up her job rather than the man. That goes to other problems with wage inequality between men and women. We're not going to get into that now. But I don't want to mention women without putting it in the context if it's kind of like part of an underlying social injustice that one group bears the brunt of this. Next thing. So this is a little bit about schools. The dotted lines and the solid line in gray is total student spending, which includes our dollars and state dollars and federal dollars. And so you can see that at our peak, we were spending about $22,815, adjusted for inflation. Today, we're spending about $20,639. So it's about a 10% drop in what we're spending on kids. So if you wonder why the schools have some problems, and staffing is a big one because these are positions largely that were lost inside the school system. Administrative positions I don't care about so much, but the loss of aides in a classroom has posed a real challenge for teachers trying to work with a very diverse population, operating at many different levels of ability to perform, so to speak. The blue lines are just county spending, just our dollars. And you can see back in 2012, 2010 again, we were spending over $16,000. Today we're spending a little over $13,000. That's more than a 10% drop. And that's, really hurts the students. You can see over the couple, I came in over here, which would be about over there. And so we've been trying to push school spending back up, but we still haven't been able to get it back where it was before. Next. This is how we rate compared to other places in the state. Baltimore City spends the most per pupil. Howard County spends more than us. Prince George's County spends more than us. That's us. That's Anne Arundel and Baltimore counties. We used to be here at the top of this heap. We're no longer at the top of the heap. So other people have maintained their spending or increased it. We have not done as much as other people have done. Next. I was talking about what happens with our bonds and the declining buying power. If for us to buy what we bought back in 2009, we would need to be at $500 million a year in bonding. We are not. We are down there. And so we've really struggled to build infrastructure. We have built, you see no BRT really in the county. You see something on 29, which isn't a true BRT line. It's bus and mixed traffic for the lower part of it, particularly after New Hampshire Avenue. But it's that way because if you don't have any money, you don't build it. And that's one of the things we've been struggling with, is try to figure out how we get the money to build this. So we need tax restructuring in the county, and I'm not looking to raise residential taxes, just to be clear. I'm looking to balance the taxes more equitably between the public sector and the private sector. And I will show you some charts in a minute, but basically our tax structure reflects the 50s and 60s. Most people worked, or a lot of people worked in the federal government. That was our major employer. Montgomery County grew because of white flight. After DC schools and everybody else's schools integrated, the white population of DC left. And the red line was built to ferry people who had moved out to the suburbs back to work in the District of Columbia and then back home in the suburbs again. We all know what that was about. I don't have to tell you. I think you can figure it out. But it meant we had a lot of housing growth. But once everybody had resettled themselves out of here, there was the big push on housing kind of comes to an end at some point when most people made their decision about where to live. But we were able to build the best schools and what for at the time was a modern infrastructure. So we were kind of ahead of the game back then. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to maintain it. So now we're a mature and developed community. The federal government's not expanding, it's actually shrinking. So it's been challenging for us for that because that employs a lot of people in Montgomery County. The federal agencies, some of them have relocated some of their services outside of Montgomery County. If Donald Trump gets elected and he does what he wants to do at the federal government, there'll be a lot fewer jobs in DC and in Montgomery County, and that is not going to be helpful because people will probably go where the jobs go, which could lead to population decline, and it'll certainly lead to revenue decline. So that's one of the things we're very worried about. We continue to try to invest, but we have not been able to invest either in our schools or our transportation at the level we should be investing in them. And the communities in Northern Virginia have figured out a way to do this, and I've been advocating since I was on the council to mimic what Northern Virginia does, because, you know, you'd have to be blind not to see what's happened and how Tyson's Corner and Northern Virginia have transformed themselves, and for nobody around here to be curious about how they did it and just simply say, why aren't you like Northern Virginia? It's like identifying a problem and then refusing to look for an answer. You know, the answer is Northern Virginia has a very different taxing structure, and I'm about to go to that. This is apparently, I got to get these slides in a slightly different order. This is what I was talking about, recordation taxes. So you can see this is 2013. We're here. We follow a little bit above or below this trend line. In 22, they spike like crazy. This is, I think, when the council, they raised the taxes on residential and commercial transfer taxes because they reduced the taxes on the developers who wanted to build on top of metro stations. Basically said, you don't have to pay anything if you're going to build there. And because that put a big dent in our revenues, they had to increase the taxes on residential property and other commercial property, which is the transfer and recordation. However, you can see where we dropped to. So we're below where we were in 2013 in terms of revenues from those sources. They ticked up a little bit this year. We're anticipating they're going to tick up more. Now that we know this, you know, we didn't know what to project because we didn't know when the feds were going to take action. The feds took it down a half a point. They're talking about taking it down another half a point and possibly more. You drop these rates by a point or point and a half, that is going to change the mortgage market. It's going to change the financing market. You may see a break on your credit cards. You may not, depends how much the banks decide to keep, because this is what they borrow at, is the federal rate. So if they're borrowing for less, they should pass it through to consumers. There's no guarantee they will. But the banks and the mortgage industry will probably pass this through because they have less activity than they would have if they were at a lower rate. Next, now the things I wanted to show you before. So we're comparing the tax structure on commercial property between the District of Columbia, Fairfax County, and Montgomery County. So DC has the lowest tax burden on residential property, but also well, they have a much higher tax burden on commercial property. This is their base rate also for residential property, 85 cents. You're paying $1.04. That is only possible in DC because their top rate on property worth more than $10 million is $1.89. And if the property is worth more than, I think it's $5 million, it's about $1.60, and then it drops down to $1.04. So that's what they're charging commercial property. That's what they're charging residential property. This is Fairfax County. They're at $1.20 base tax on commercial and residential. If you add all the other taxes they have on commercial property in special taxing districts, like the Fairfax Route 28 corridor, or Tyson's Corner, which has the highest of all, they're up to $1.51. This is Montgomery County. $1.15, that includes the state tax, by the way. This is only taxes going to Fairfax County. This is taxes, 11 cents of that goes to the state. So our county tax rate's $1.04, our combined rate's $1.15. Commercial property pays the same as residents do. And by law right now, if we want to raise taxes on commercial property, we have to raise taxes on residential property. Fairfax County does not have to do that. None of the normal Northern Virginia counties have to do that. One of the taxes they have over here on commercial property is 12.5 cents on every square inch of commercial property in Fairfax County. It raises a lot of money, and they use that money and it has to go into transportation. Northern Virginia made a deal with the development community that they would both go to Richmond with a Republican governor and a Republican legislature and get Virginia to give them the authority to raise taxes on commercial property on the condition that the money can't be used for any social purposes, no schools, no feeding people. It can only be used for transportation. But the business community recognized by building transportation, they would make Northern Virginia more attractive, and that's why they did it. So they pour the money into transportation, they build major transportation projects, and Montgomery County twiddles its thumbs. When I was on the council, I spent 12 years to get there. Every time we talked about trying to raise more money from the commercial sector, the answer was no. And if we wanted to do it, we'd have to raise taxes. If I wanted to raise taxes 2 cents on the commercial sector, we'd have to raise them 2 cents on the residents. And raising them 2 cents on the residents was a political no-no, and so we did nothing. And so we have over a decade, almost 2 decades of doing nothing, while Fairfax has been doing this. And so if you wonder how they got where they got, think about their tax structure. It's not a miracle. There's nothing special sauce over there. Tyson's Corner was just another shopping center, a big one, but just another shopping center until they made the investments they made to make it something more than a shopping center. So this is where we are. Not shown on here is the $200 million they collect in Fairfax County for a licensing fee on commercial property that does not exist in Montgomery County. If I had $200 million, we wouldn't have any budget problems. We'd have none. We would have funded the schools. We'd be funding more homeless programs. We could do a lot of things that would benefit this community, but that has been off limits in Montgomery County. This is, again, done by the District of Columbia. All my numbers come from somebody else, because I don't want anybody saying you made up these numbers. These are numbers. DC does a study. They compare commercial rates. This is from 2020. We're waiting for their updated commercial rates to come out, but it's not going to change much. The highest jurisdiction for commercial, this is small corporations. The highest is Washington. Alexandria is next, Arlington, Fairfax County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County. For large corporations, the highest is Washington, Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County. So if you hear somebody tell you that businesses are leaving Montgomery County to go to Fairfax County because of taxes, it's BS. Nicest way I can say it. Their taxes are way higher than ours on commercial property. They're going there because for the taxes they pay, they get something. Montgomery County has this thing called impact taxes. If you're a developer, you don't get anything for the impact tax because it's not big enough to build a major project. It goes into a fund, the impact tax fund, and it's not distributed by geographical area. It's spent based on the next project we think we can build. So the developers give us money. The little they give us, we don't use to benefit them. So they have a very hostile view of how we tax them to begin with. Because if they're paying taxes, we at least should have figured out how to focus money on what we were trying to do in the different parts of the county. But with so little money, it's been really a problem. And taxing districts are actually fair because they spread the taxes over all the businesses that are going to benefit from a transit project, for example. If you do an impact tax, it's only on the building that's being built. So they wind up, if you think about a glass, and if I was filling up a glass, if everybody who pays until everybody in the system who builds until the glass is full has a very cheap ride. The guy who pours in enough development to overflow the glass, they're the ones that get hit for the taxes here, the worst. And so it's not even a fair system. It doesn't work very well. It doesn't raise enough money, and it doesn't let us do the things that Northern Virginia's done. So that's what I want to change. We're going to put a lot of work into it this year. We've been working with the governor's staff. We need state legislation to do it the right way, but we also need your support, because when this comes to the council, we need residents to say we want a fair tax system, and we want to be able to build the infrastructure so we don't continue to lag Northern Virginia in terms of their job growth. Park and Planning just did another round of projections. They do these projections every few years. It's called Round 10. You can look it up. They actually reduced the projected jobs for Montgomery County by 46,000 jobs. And Fairfax's county numbers are still going up. That is a sign and a signal that by refusing to build infrastructure, people are going to continue to go to pay more someplace that actually understands the importance of infrastructure. So if you guys can grasp that, we can use help when we get into the budget season. So with that, I've told you what's on my mind, so it's your turn to tell me what's on your mind.
We have the county executive 2 mics. Barry has 1, Cicero has 1. So you could raise your hand and they'll just alternate questions. And then should there be one online, Lana will help us. Close it.
If you could just stand up, I need to hold it.
Oh, sure. Good evening, everyone. Sharice Scott.
Hi.
And I came in late, but this part of the presentation I've heard before. So my biggest question is, what is the challenge when you say that Montgomery County has a law that prohibits us from, increasing commercial without increasing residential? Yep. What does it take to amend that law?
It takes state action. All the municipalities have a right to have 2 different rates. None of the counties have the right to do it here. I tried to get it last year. The council didn't support it. So I was not able to go to Annapolis and say this is something the executive wants and the council wants. So I need the council to understand the importance of this, or we're going to continue to look at everybody else's taillights. And that's the problem. If we had had support, we probably would have gotten support from the delegation. Without the council saying we support this too, we didn't get support from our delegation. But the weird thing is there's this organization called MACO. It represents all the counties, Republican and Democratic. Almost all the other counties, including the Republican counties, want to do the same thing we want to do. If you think about it, last year the state ran out of money. And I will say this, Hogan thought there was $8 billion there he was handing over to Moore. It turned out to be like virtually nothing, and which was a real shock to everybody's system because everybody was talking about $8 billion. There was no $8 billion. Moore did not spend away $8 billion, so it's not there. So all the counties realized, because we depend on state money for transportation projects, if there is no state money and you have no ability as a county to raise taxes, then there will be no transportation projects. So that's why we need state legislation. We're asking for a relatively simple bill that lets us use differential tax rates, create special taxing districts. We wouldn't even spread it over the entire county because if you're not benefiting from the transit we're building, there's no point in taxing people who are too far away from it to benefit. But if we had this and we focused on our major development corridors, we could actually raise a substantial amount of money. And it's not going to kill anybody.
Thank you.
Next.
Don't be shy, guys.
Now, we have a lot of representatives from different organizations out here, so this is the opportunity for you to let the county exec know.
I haven't had an early night all weekend. Don't spoil it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Pope, and I live here in the Hillendale corridor. I've been living in this area for quite some time, and been to many of these budget forums and hearings. So my question is, just to piggyback a little bit off of you. We see that we need these things, right? Mm-hmm. And we done had these discussions over and over and over again. So how can we help you get this done?
We need to get residents to write letters to the council and say you support a split tax rate so the county can raise the money it needs to do to build the infrastructure that'll bring companies here. It's a real easy equation. It's not a complicated message. But if we don't do that, the only other way to do this is put a tax on everybody. I do not want to have to do that this time. It wasn't fun doing it for the schools. I don't want to have to do it on this one.
Okay, so with that being said, then, we see on this board, it says we are third, right?
Yep.
In the biotech hub.
Yep.
So that's potential jobs, right?
And we're building that.
Yes, and so if we're supposed to possibly be getting these jobs, shouldn't it be helping us with our tax revenue? Because I know we keep making all these promises, and I just don't want to come here next year and the year after and the year after, and we still at the same point. And as you showed in your slides, we're not progressing forward. We're actually moving backwards, and that's a problem.
So we tried, for example, in the budget, we wanted to add more investment in some of the life sciences. We've been analyzing what Montgomery County has and what Boston, our big competition is Boston and San Francisco. So we ranked number 3 in this group of 3 counties in the country. And our biggest problem is state and local government have invested a lot more in California and in Massachusetts than state and local government have invested here. We had additional investments we wanted in our budget last year, including a major incubator. We have a major company that does incubators that wants to come here. We couldn't get the money, which was not a lot of money, to get this company down here. We're trying to figure out a way to get it down here. You have to make investments. Every time you bring something, I hate to say it, you bring something in front of people, it's treated like this is an expense. Everything is not an expense. Some things are investments. If you put money in a bank, you're not having an expense. You've made a decision to invest. The decision to build infrastructure is not an expense, it's an investment. The decision to put money into things that will attract life sciences companies here is an investment, not an expense. If the mentality of people making decisions is this is all expenses and we want to avoid expenses, you will never do anything. And we've got to get ourselves out of this mindset that anything you spend is this terrible word, an expense, and nobody wants to have expenses. So we pushed on that. We plan on pushing it again. We got a AAA bond rating again. And I hope that we're able to publish some of the language that the rating agencies use to describe the management of the county and what we've been able to do, because they were very impressed with what Montgomery County does, and we're an elite few as far as they're concerned in terms of management. I don't know if you realize, but when I came into office, the county's goal was 10% reserves, right? We never achieved 10% reserves. We ended last year with 17% reserves. We've gone up every year after the start of the COVID. I'm supposed to be this wild tax and spend liberal. I know that I got to build up my reserves. We were able to take some of that 17% and use it on one-time expenditures. We put another $65 million into affordable housing that I wouldn't have been able to do out of a normal budget, but because we had reserves and it didn't take away from other things, we were able to do it. We are being very careful about how we manage the money, but we've got to be able to have a base that gives us enough money year in and year out to make the decisions we need to make. It is kind of cool that Silver Spring was the number one in the country in best places to live for families. That's kind of a nice recognition. That came from the Fortune magazine. So we've had some really good recognitions for the things in Montgomery County. We need to take it to the next level. And the good news, by the way, is that Mr. Bramble's project is going forward. I don't know if, since a lot of you are here, I don't know if you saw the stories about the new town he's going to build. And it's kind of amazing. And he's willing to make investments. And we're working with him on a different tax structure that lets him build and also make sure the county gets the revenues it needs. And it's really a pleasure to work with somebody who understands that the county has needs He has needs. Let's figure out how to do something that works for both of us. But you're going to like this because he's going to build quickly.
I got you.
Thank you so much. Okay, you hold it for me. Okay, thank you. My name's Dr. Trofena Choti with Every Thrive, and I'm a community person because I work in the community every day through a nonprofit called Every Thrive. And thank you, Mark, for coming to present this budget. I see we have a very robust budget as a county, and we need to be proud of. And my question is a little different from what has been asked before. And mine is looking at the economics where I operate in the space of the community, that we have a very robust budget, but I look at where I operate is Mid-County and East County. I don't have a feel like this money is trickling down. The reason I'm asking so, especially for the African community that is here represented, the statistics that we have is that when we look at the ratio comparisons, and I'm talking this from what is out there, is that a white family has 8 times the wealth of an average black family. That's in Maryland. And a black worker makes 71 cents to $1 for the white worker. So in that scenario is that black families are struggling. They have 3 to 4 jobs, because I'm talking this from experience as a food assistance provider who is working with the families and seeing what's happening. They're taking 3 to 4 jobs. And what the end result is, children have absent parents. When they come from school, the parent is not home. They go to bed, the parent is not home because they are doing their 3rd or 4th shift. And I feel that, the way we're seeing it, the end result is that these children who feel unsupported by their parents, if they manage to transition from middle school, high school, they don't make it. A majority of them, they are missing from school, and they're missing from work. And they are somewhere in the basement, in the household, or in the apartments. So my question is, County Executive, I'm looking at this budget. What is it that the county and the council can do to bring in a racial and economic justice twist to this budget so that we can lift those who are on the bottom, we can strengthen the families so that children have food they need, families can afford to stay in Montgomery County because some are running away to Baltimore because the rent is high here in Montgomery County, and we want them to stay. We love this county. I mean, this is my home for the 25 years, and I don't think I will ever go anywhere other than here. This is my home. But it's becoming harder based on the anecdotal evidence, meeting families when they make lines to come and big food, and listening to the community and seeing how young people are helpless, and we need to do something. So my question is, what can we do to support these families, to support maybe entrepreneurs who want to start businesses? They can really transition from the low-paying jobs to a business. So from these numbers, maybe you can maybe speak to us who are working in the community so that we're able to work with you. Is there something we can help, or what is it that you can help the black community in Montgomery County?
So there's a lot in there to unpack. I'll start at the back end of it. So we now have an economic, I have a department that does, it's a business department. And they actually help people start jobs. They help people who've got small businesses. They help them figure out how to grow their businesses. They'll start with startups and help them figure out how to start up a business. I was just in a meeting with M&T Bank. It happened to be focused, this was a Latino meeting, but they're doing the same thing for other people in the community, where they're training people who started small businesses and helping support them as they grow their businesses. So those things are happening. They're going to continue to happen. That was the department we added in when I got elected. And now we're up to 5 people in the different centers in the county, so that we have actual people on the ground who will work with you. And so you can contact our office and reach out to the business center, particularly if there are particular things you want to do, or if you could help, like get information from us that you could disseminate to people who maybe don't know how to find us. You've touched on things that the government's not going to fix right away. I mean, you're dealing with differences in income that are basically rooted in differences in education. And the differences in education come because this is, frankly, a pretty racist society. And we know that schools were not equal in this county. The number of people in my generation who are black and went to college doesn't match the number of people who are white, so the opportunities are very different. I have no magic wand to go back and change that, and it's unfortunate, but it's also probably the immigrant experience in the United States from the time immigrants started coming here. They wound up at the lowest jobs on the rung and eventually worked their way out of it. I will say the black community is especially troubling because they haven't worked their way out of it. There are lots of groups who've come here, been integrated into society, and have socioeconomics that look like everybody else. The black community, which has been here from the beginning pretty much, has not managed to do that, and it's because the barriers have been more strongly kept in place against black people in this country than anybody else. I am not naive about that, but it limits what the government's able to do in any one moment in terms of changing somebody's 71% on a dollar to a higher percentage. We do have with Anthony Featherstone at WorkSource Montgomery, they do training, and one of the things I liked before he was there, they might try to find a job for somebody with the skills they had in that moment, which means if you could only afford a minimum wage job didn't require any skills, that's what they would find you. Now they're working at upskilling the workforce, so we can direct youth to programs that he's running that would help lift people up so they can get higher paid, better paid jobs. We've got to do something with the schools. I was a former school teacher. I spent 17 years teaching. The school system, I think, has to, once and for all, recognize they have to prepare people equally for work as they do for college. Work can't be what you're stuck with because you can't go to college. We have the opportunity in school to train people for decent paying jobs that a person could say, if I get that job, I can pay rent, I can buy a car, I can live like everybody else. If you're a plumber, if you were a carpenter, you're gonna make more than a teacher makes. So those are things I think we have to start emphasizing, is educating kids completely and doing it early. If you don't have a sense of hope when you're a little kid, it's hard to get you a sense of hope that you don't have from the start. When I once did a study of kids and I showed them pictures of different jobs, and I had a racially mixed group, and the aspirations for black kids were for the lower level jobs. They didn't see themselves as lawyers, bankers, or scientists, and that starts young because it's not in their experience to see that. So we've got to do things that alter experiences. We also have to raise expectations and show kids they can actually do what everybody else does. It is, again, I can only speak from experience, but if a kid doesn't think they can be successful, a lot of times they stop trying because nobody wants to fail. And if you fail, that's embarrassing. If you tell the rest of your classmates, I don't care, I'm not doing my homework, or I'm not taking this test, then you haven't failed. You've just said, you're just showing everybody that you don't need to do this. That is really self-destructive. They don't know that it's self-destructive. They don't realize what it's going to cost them, but emotionally, it's a protective device. So we've got to work on those things if we're going to change the track that people are on. But we've got a racial equity office. They actually do look at budgets They have told departments where they thought their spending wasn't right. We've tried, and Ike started this. He did it with capital projects where when he first came in, there were, I think, 3 or 4 black community centers that had been allowed to run into the ground in Montgomery County. And we were building these gorgeous new centers on the other side of the county. And Ike just came in and said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to fix these community centers up in the black community. That was one of the most significant things I've ever seen anybody do. And when somebody asked me to talk about Ike, that's one of the stories I'll tell, because he stood up and told the council that this is what we're going to do. And there are people who are like, I'm not going to get things from my district. It's like, yeah, sometimes you're not, because for a long time, other people can get things in their districts. So we'll continue to look at this. It's important to me, and I know it's important to you. And I don't want to repeat the legacy of the past. So we've got a lot of things we've got to do to try to change it. We're one of the few places still running food programs, and we're running expensive food programs. We get a lot of food out. We're going to run out of money. I'm going to put a supplemental in to make sure we don't run out of money. We provide rent assistance. We can't afford to provide as much as we need, but at least we've got a program. And Kristen's here with her leadership. We actually got rent stabilization in. The numbers, I think, a little bit too high. It should be 3% or inflation rather than 6%. But 6% is the start, and if you get political will, you can always get it back down to inflation. I don't understand why it's not tied to inflation. It would be nice if we could say if you have a job, then you have your wage has to go up according to the rent index, which is something I've thought about, because we tie it to inflation. Well, we could tie it to the rent. We could tie it to rental increases, and say if because low-income people are the people who need this the most. So if your rent's going up 6%, maybe your wages need to go up 6%. So I'm thinking about things, and we'll see what kind of political will there is.
Hello, hi guys. Hi, thanks for coming, and thanks for allowing me to come. I'm Dr. Josue. I am a brain wellness scientist. I'm a neuropsychiatrist. I'm in the biotech program too. Let me ask you, from what we hear, I've taken quite some notes. Can you think of hope, joy, and optimism by looking at the budget? So the reason I'm asking you...
It depends what you think about it. $7 billion is a large number.
I know, but everything we're saying here is what we don't have, what we should have. So let me tell you what I do in my office. I think that one thing I want to ask you, you didn't talk about the liability that the city has to have for teachers, police officers. Can you estimate what it is?
What do you mean by liability?
Well, you have police officers, you have teachers. I have teachers I work with as a physician, right, where sometimes they have to take off, sometimes people are sued. So do we know how much we're spending for that?
Not a lot.
Okay.
That's not a big drag on the budget.
Okay. And I know you gave the answer that if you had $200 million, that you wouldn't have any budget problem. What I'm saying is that as far as we all have a brain, I think is there a room that we can find to have expert with us? You mentioned mindset. The way we can really help society to live, what I do in my office, is help us to change the mindset, create structure. That's where really I think we can save money. Because if we can teach inside the schools human beings how to reduce stress, which is, I was driving, you hear about the Alabama shootings. So all these things are happening in society. Where we can really change society and help the rest of us is to help us to get the brain tools so we can reduce stress, because stress, what's going on, we have a very fast changing environment, and that's causing a lot of brain stresses. So I'm saying that we should look into how we can get the human brain to adapt to the new environment. That's what we brain scientists are doing. Then that way we can reduce physical and mental illness. That can save us money. So that's what I wanted to suggest. But I was asking you, I guess...
So I tell you, the brain stuff in schools, you should be talking to the school system about. But it's not totally off base with some of the work they're trying to do with kids. And I do think stress is really destructive for kids. And when they see the stress in the adults around them, when I think about...
But that can save, what I'm saying, that the way to save money, I have teachers who are taking off. a bunch of teachers who are taking off because they're stressed out and overwhelmed. I'm saying that there's a lot of money that can be saved if we help in creating wellness infrastructure to really manage stresses. Because what's going on again, we have a fast-changing environment. For the past 40 years, we have changed the environment and the brain is not adapting well. So I'm saying that we should look for places to save money in that.
I don't know if I think about it as saving money. I think about making people healthier.
No, I'm saying that, but
If saving money gets there,
no,
yes.
no, but I'm saying if the teachers who are taking off, right? I was just talking there's a teacher, I called her, and she said there were 3 people who were supposed to show up. She's the only one. She's thinking about taking off. We have teachers who don't want to go to school because it's so overwhelming, right? We have a lot of things going on. So stress causes a lot of cost. People don't, absentees and stuff like that. I'm just saying that we can look for where we can get taxes, but one of the ways we can save money in society is by creating wellness, and that can reduce stresses that causing a lot of
I
consequences.
won't argue with you about that, but I'm saying it's not a free ride. If you would have to pay the people to do the work
Yes.
in the current circumstance, because you don't save money right away.
No.
So it is not a free ride.
No,
But
definitely.
it's something that it's not a bad thing to ask the school system to look at.
Yeah, definitely.
We've actually increased our mental health support to police and fire because we realize these people are under a lot of stress. They do very difficult jobs. They have to deal with life and death situations frequently. That's not a good way to have to work, and people need some help, so we've increased mental health supports there. That might not be a bad idea for the school system.
Yes, I'm just suggesting that's a way that we can indirectly save money in society.
Thank you.
First, I want to thank you, Mark, for going around to different communities to present your budget. I appreciate that. My name is Elias Waldo. I'm from the Ito-American Chamber of Commerce. And I got one of the difficulties that I see, maybe from what I saw in terms of comparing Montgomery County to the rest of counties around us, is I think this county, maybe one of the things that it may lack is giving the information to the public. That's probably one of the things that how intensive it is sharing the information to the public so that they can understand what is going on, so that they can support you on your plans. I have seen under your leadership, I have seen so many good changes and a lot of efforts, even though you're not maximizing all the things that you wanted to do, but you put them out on the table all the time. So maybe one of the question is the executive branch with the legislature, maybe they can get together on this. I'm sure you have done that in the past many times, but maybe one-to-one also can work also at the same time. But further than that, one of the things that the business community is lacking is now you have a business department, and I haven't heard about it until the last 2 weeks ago when I was here. So this is the first time I heard it. So what I'm saying is, going out to the community, going out to the business community to reach out to them and to show them what are the things available, I think that will be a great start, for to jump things up. And on top of that, there is no reason Montgomery County not to be on the top, because this is the most diverse society that the America knows, and they know that. And everybody's saying it. But there are so many issues has been raised, equitability and other problems that we're having, just like in other counties, but more so in some areas in this area. So we can be able to figure that out. I'm sure your department, your management, and the counselors, the councils, and the community, what can we do to help you to make things happen?
So I think you're kind of right about getting messages out. I was notorious when I was a council member. I don't think I did 5 press releases in 12 years because it wasn't about putting out press. I'm doing, and I figure that's what you do is you do. We are doing more work in terms of putting more information. I've got a weekly message that goes out, and it's no longer a COVID message. It's not just about me talking, but we put in there lots of different programs to inform people. I was asked to do the same thing with business information. Somebody said, you know, it's great that you're doing all this, but nobody knows you're doing it. And so we realized that on permitting, people in the permitting world who are working with us may get a notice. But all the businesses who may have years of bad experiences with us and not had a reason to go back there, they may think the county's the same way it's always been. So we've talked about making sure that all businesses know that we've changed the way we do permitting. And I think we need to do that for some other things. We need everybody to know what's different rather than assuming everybody has an experience with us and they've learned it's different. Because I was told by a pretty prominent business person, they had no idea what we had changed in permitting because she hadn't had to go pull a permit in a decade probably. So you wouldn't know what's different. And so if she talks to somebody about her experience of pure permitting, it's not a today experience, it's a yesterday experience. That doesn't help us. So we're trying to take what you said seriously and further put out more information, and we'll continue to try to push on that. And we want to make, we're about to make a change in the Office of Community Partnerships, and one of the things I want to emphasize is I don't think we've used it enough to push information into the communities that are part of that, and we haven't done enough to collect responses back from communities. One of the things we are going to do going forward is make sure that if the county's got a message, that we get it out to the groups in the Office of Community Partnerships, and they have a responsibility to get the message down to their member organizations. So I hear you, I agree with you, we haven't done enough, we will do more.
Doris Dean from the Caribbean American Advisory Group. There are a couple of questions raised that will affect what I'm going to say as well. First of all, one question is, do you have in mind a line item for dealing with the immigrants that are coming in, the refugees that are coming in? We've had, is that a possibility? We've had an influx of, as you know, Haitians and Jamaicans and some others from the Caribbean, which have been putting a strain on the community. They have demanded some help from our advisory group and from our liaison, who's done yeoman's work on his own to help. And we wondered whether there's some way of increasing or creating a pool where they can access help for lawyer services, applying for jobs, housing, food, security. There are a number of issues that they are creating.
So I was asked by somebody if I could organize a meeting with some of the citizen refugee groups that you're talking about, as well as with the folks in the county government, to see if we can have a more coordinated approach. Everybody doesn't know what everybody else is doing. And so they wanted to have a meeting where they could talk to our people about what they're doing and how we fit in and how we could coordinate better. So we're going to facilitate doing that. We put money in the budget. I do not have unlimited amounts of money. I don't know for another 2 months for sure how much money. I won't even know in 2 months for sure. I wouldn't even have an idea what I can get in the next budget. I'm hoping I don't have to make cuts in the budget. We'll see how that goes, but if we've got more money, then we'll try to do more things. I mean, I'm not shy about spending money on social services, because I know the stronger the community is, the less long-term problems we're going to have. You know, there is a virtuous cycle to investment in people. So let me see what happens as the budget develops, and if the more space I get, the more money we'll put into the space.
The other question I wanted to ask is, one of the issues you wanted to raise is about mental health in schools. And piggybacking on what the gentleman said earlier, I know that it is going to be a cost, but mental health, especially for students, because we have been hearing of students who are at suicide level and things like that. And I know that it will eventually pay off when they have the mental health. As you said, it's not a free ride. You have to put in the money first, and the results will come later on. how much of a feedback do you have from the council that they may be on the same wavelength in terms of working towards funding something like that?
We're on a little different wavelength on the amount of funding. I mean, I put in the budget, and a lot of stuff was cut out of the budget at the last minute. Almost all of it was social service related. I felt like we had the money to deal with it. I did not think we needed to cut it. I will continue to put things in there. But if you're talking about schools, you've got to go to them. I mean, one of the problems is they've gotten so used to the lack of money we have, they don't ask for everything they need. And so for years, they weren't getting mental health workers. It's not like I wouldn't have the ability to cut their budget. I may not fund the whole thing, but I can't cut line items out of it. And they never put stuff in their budget because they were afraid if they asked for this, they wouldn't get money for something else. We've got to figure out how we get to a place where we're not making choices like that. I can't tell you that I'm in that place right now because I don't know what my resources are, and I don't know what people's appetite is for change. I don't know what freedom I might get in changing the tax structure that might free up more money to do some of these things. So stay tuned. But I at least know what direction we need to go in.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Abdul Aziz, and I'm from MCC Medical Clinic. What made Silver Spring #1 people here in this audience, and I really want to appreciate all of them, their contributions from Ethiopian Chamber of Commerce to the Afri tribe. At the same time, your leadership as well as Council Member Mink's office. And we have a mayor, we call him Mayor Jeru, and his guidance, and with Ayana, Miss Ayana, we're getting services. And last year we served about 15,000 patients in Montgomery County, and we are here, health and wellness as our service. And we have seen an increasing number of people coming for dental clinic. We have 3 dental chairs, but that chair, I mean, the dental care really is so much in demand and need. And we like to work with you how to make sure people living in Montgomery County who cannot afford to come to SafeNet clinics and getting services. And I really want to thank your leadership on that.
So I have my own personal experience of like a bunch of teeth I have to replace. And I know that if I weren't doing the job I were doing, I wouldn't be paying these bills. I would not be filling spaces in my jaw. And I know how difficult it is because the ones I haven't been able to fill yet, it actually hurts. And I imagine what it'd be like if I had to live through a life of having these things hurt, which would not be very good. So I can kind of identify, except I know I have a choice, and I'm lucky. There are a lot of people who don't have that choice. We've talked about bringing together the providers, including the clinics, with the counties so we can talk about what are the gaps in what we do. And the hospitals need to be part of this discussion as well. The hospitals during COVID, and it hasn't changed, they saw patients they'd never seen before, not surprising, but they came in with more comorbidities, existing illnesses other than COVID that they had not seen before, and that told them that they were dealing with folks who did not have access to health care until COVID sent them to a hospital. It's much more difficult to treat and much more difficult to be successful with treating, which is why the deaths were higher in older populations who came in with comorbidities. So I'm trying to work to get everybody to talk with each other about how do we share services. You probably don't know, but there's a dental clinic at University of Shady Grove. They've got a ton of empty seats. They've got dental students sitting there, and they don't have enough patients to keep them busy. So I've been talking to people who aren't providing or don't have enough capacity for dental care to take advantage of USG so that you can take advantage of the dental care that's offered up there. That's very expensive, and the fact that you've got a room full of students and chairs that they want to fill, that's something we ought to take advantage of. So hopefully we'll get a meeting together soon, and I will probably go to the meeting myself because I want to hear the discussion. But I want to make sure that we walk out of there with a commitment to trying to build a more integrated system between the county and between or nonprofit providers. The county alone can't solve this problem. Your clinics and the other clinics played a critical role during COVID. You still play a critical role, particularly if you're dealing with undocumented workers. We're hoping that the state last year allowed anybody to get insurance regardless of immigration status. Now we're hoping the state can find some money to provide some money toward funding it, because just because you can buy it doesn't mean you have the income to buy it. So we want to see what we can do. I've tried, we are looking at it. I already know that the number is too big for the county to buy insurance for everybody. But if there are a couple of different entities we can get to put money into it, we might be able to get somewhere. So we'll work on it, and I'll make sure you're part of the larger group that gets included.
Mr. County Executive, it's 8:32. You want to keep going, I'm sure.
Sure, a couple more.
You haven't said no, don't keep going yet.
How many hands are there? 1, 2, 3. Good.
All right.
4.
Thank you. My name is Bertukan. I work for Test Center. I worked since 2013 for the past 11 years. So my question tonight is, from what I have observed about the budgeting, is about the affordable housing. So I serve, the low-income families, and from what I have seen from the past, one of the major issue in our county is housing. So, and the budget, what I think is just only 2%. So compared to the challenges that we have, people are being evicted, and the rent is, increasing from time to time. And, the minimum wage is still like down, 16, 15, 20. So it's very challenging for people to afford, to rent even apartments. So are there any solutions, plan, because Montgomery County is, one of the best place to live. People are attracted, but the demand and then the supply towards the housing is still very, it's not like, comparable, with the other counties and with the other places. So are there anything to improve this situation? Even, our shelters, people, I face different challenges and they go shelters, but they have to be in a wait list. So, and to subsidize, renters or affordable housing or everything,
Look,
thank you.
We don't have enough money to subsidize everybody's rent. I mean, when people are behind $20,000 on rent, and I've got probably hundreds of people, we don't have the money to do that. That's reality. And we've got to figure out how to build more affordable housing, which we've been doing, but we don't have enough money to build it at a pace to address all the needs. I will point out that Park and Planning has a new plan called what they call attainable housing. Go to look at the plan. On the very front page, it says, this is not about building affordable housing. They don't think affordable housing is the #1 problem in the county. They're saying they're going to build market housing. We do not have a problem finding market housing in Montgomery County. We have a problem finding affordable housing in Montgomery County. They are so divorced from the experiences of most people in the community that I find it rather shocking. I'm going to push back against it, and I'm going to try to get a focus on affordability. My office is developing a legislation. I've had one meeting on it. I'm going to have one more before we send it to the council. We're looking at a complete communities legislation that would require the planning board, anytime they zone an area, they have to zone for everybody. They can't go to Bethesda and zone only for high-rises, which means the only people who are going to live there are people who can afford high-rise rents, and not zone so that other people with different incomes can find opportunities to live there, because they have zoned those people out of certain parts of the county. And we need to make sure that it comes to an end. And we'll send legislation across to the council, and we'll see where it goes. But Park and Planning needs direction that if you're planning for everybody. You're not planning for this group of people over here and a different group of people over there. That's what happened on the east side of the county a long time ago, where somebody had the bright idea, we'll put all the garden apartments for low-income people over here and keep them out of the other neighborhoods. So let's be blunt about it. that was wrong then, it's wrong now, and my goal is to send something over that'll force people to have to deal with it, because it's not coming out of the planning board.
Good evening, County Executive. Thank you very much for hosting these community budget forums, especially tonight to speak to our collective diasporas. My name is Kina Anyam. I serve as the chair for the African Affairs Advisory Group for the Office of Community Partnerships. And so you mentioned earlier trainings and education being available in the county. Something that both the African and Caribbean diaspora share is the Francophone community. With constant commentary about the shortage of healthcare workers and teachers for students, especially those who have shared experiences with our students, how can you allocate a budget to help those who come to this country to get great jobs by leveraging their multilingual abilities to train up to be eligible for jobs in the county? I feel that with the Montgomery County partnership with the Montgomery College, there could be a program that can be created for skilled Francophone speakers to get a certain amount of hours for them to serve in a job or apprenticeship that can then qualify them for the ability to get the jobs that are seemingly out of reach due to language testing. We're losing these talented and skilled people to other counties and in some cases, other states who have a barrier to entry that's lower for white-collar jobs. I think a plan like this could help workforce development and help keep money in the county.
If you could find an example of a place with lower barriers so we can compare what our barriers are, that would be really helpful, because I generally think of us as having relatively low barriers because the county, I can't make decisions for the private sector. So you have to have a company that wants a Francophone speaker. How we find them, I don't know, because they don't normally come to us, but that's the question you could ask. We could ask WorkSource Montgomery, did they get any requests for Francophone speakers or others? You're talking about more skilled jobs. I'm not sure what we'd create, but it'd be interesting to see if there's a better model someplace of how they connect people with language differences to companies that are looking for people with different language skills. So if you could provide some information, then I can make sure we try to digest it.
I actually have a follow-up question as well. Thank you. Two, in fact. One, in terms of the budget for OCP, there is currently $1,000 allocated to each diaspora towards supporting county-wide events. A $1,000 budget to provide community engagements is simply not enough. And I'd like to know if there can be a greater increase to this line item for us. In addition to that, what does it look like for the county to increase the African Affairs liaison position from a part-time to full-time position? We're not the only diaspora that has a part-time liaison, but this would greatly support the community in a way that we're currently not receiving at this time.
I would have to do it for every group. I'm not doing it for one group. So if something like that gets done, it gets done for everyone. And that'll be a budget decision when we go into the budget. So you guys get to submit your request. I agree $1,000 is too low. That shouldn't be a problem to try to increase that to a more reasonable level. But full-time and part-time is, we looked at this last year. There wasn't room in the budget to do it. I didn't even get everything I wanted, which were actually programs that would have delivered services to people. So I will look at it again this year. If there's room, we'll try to do something with it.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Demoz. I'm from Ethiopian community. I would like to ask you about the county is implementing the building energy performance standard policy.
Which building?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the county is implementing the building energy performance standard policy. And I'm trying to understand how this implementation is allocating budget for multifamily housing, affordable housing units, because these residents are already energy burdened, so they need some assistance.
Right.
So have you allocated any money to support these families in order to keep these residences affordable for the community? Because
we have a whole fund, and that will get replenished, that's meant to target specifically affordable housing units. Because we know that, more than anybody, they're going to need support in making these improvements, because we don't want people to make the improvements and then raise rents and displace the people who live there. So we're aware of this. We've got a program to deal with it. It will not deal with all the buildings at once, but at least we're funding it. And as long as I'm there, we'll keep funding it.
Good evening, Mark. My name is Pete Miokin. I'm chair of the East County Citizens Advisory Board. Tonight we've talked about short-term needs and we've talked about long-term strategic desires. So I'm going to start with the short-term needs and then talk about the long-term desires. Elias, your chamber of the Ethiopian Chamber of Commerce, brought up an issue about the small businesses. We have MCEDC that's provided grants or obligations by the county. I'm not sure how many $1 million they get each year, but they're supported by county money, even though they're quasi-agency of the county, though they have their own CEO, they have their own governing structure and director leadership structure. But it'd be nice if our little dirty cousin, so to speak, the small business entity that's within the county government, within your structure, is provided funds so that they can have the same type of conferences that MCEDC has. They have the same type of outreach with the same impact that MCEDC has. That would go a long way towards gathering the small businesses, supporting them, and providing them guidance and leadership, and if necessary, some seed money or money to make them whole, or at least go out and pull in small businesses or identify small businesses that needs help. And I'm going to leave it at that.
So Peter, the EDC doesn't do the work at the community level.
Oh, no, I understand that. MCEDC
does
the strategic level, big company stuff, yes.
So my business center people are the people who do the work that you're talking about.
Yeah, but they're not at the same, they're not at the same level. They don't do the same. The one is glitzy. MCEDC, what it does, it's glitzy. It puts out those weekly or bi-weekly newsletters, or fancy looking. You never hear from your structure, from your people, and I think they need to be raised from a identity perspective also.
I'll talk to them about what they think they can do, but they are more present, and they are actually on the ground talking to businesses and all these centers around here. They do more on the ground to reach people than EDC does. EDC puts out some brochures.
Yes.
They have an occasional conference, but the people on the ground are the people in my department who are out there actually going to talk to people. If you think we could elevate the advertising.
Plus, their leadership gets paid a whole lot more than the people, our government agency employees.
I will stack my leadership up.
Yes. Now, on the strategic side, as much as we have a current need, I agree with you that the dual taxing structure is needed within the county. So you talked about getting advocacy from the citizenship to write to the council, write to you. But then we have the council who has to come to agreement. Then you said that the state has a legislation that says that you have to have this dual equal. So we're dealing with the advocacy at the citizen and business level. We're dealing with council that may be going different ways, and I'm looking at Kristen also. And then we have our state legislatures, the senators and the delegates that we have to convince. They in turn have to convince all of the other delegates, and is that true?
They need to convince half, but
yeah, half plus one.
Something supported by Republicans, elected officials across the state and Democratic officials across the state, that gets a lot higher. When the largest delegation in the Senate and the House takes no position because they haven't heard from the council, That's a problem. If we had taken a position, we could have gotten support. Not taking a position gave everybody a reason to say, well, you don't have consensus, so we're not doing it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of, I mean, is this something attainable within a year, 2 years, 5 years?
It's attainable this year.
You think so?
We're going to have some very interesting allies.
Even at the state level?
Even at the state level.
Okay.
It can be done. We have a backup plan. It's not elegant, but if you had special taxing districts and you could have a different rate, you would draw neat little half-mile lines on each side of the transit corridors and draw in the centers, and whoever's in it, you know, all the commercial property is just taxed. If we don't have that, then we do what they did in White Flint, where they drew squiggly lines all over White Flint, and they drew out all of the existing housing so that only the new commercial and existing commercial was included. That is much harder to do, but if we have to do it, we'll do it that way. I would prefer to do it cleanly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. I hope we got to some of the things you wanted to talk about tonight, and I really do appreciate the work you all do in the community. We want to make sure that, you know, my budget reflects as much as possible the things that you all are thinking about. If we don't raise everybody, we're just going to perpetuate the inequalities between different groups in our county. We need not to do that. So anything I can do, I will help with.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive.
Thank you.
That's one thing that I don't want it in front of people, but
Is that the one that has the magnetic thing that you post on your refrigerator? Okay, I remember that.